Well, I'm over with Into Film Northern Ireland, and I've been introducing a screening today of Hunt for the Wilder People. That was my favourite film of last year, hands down, no contest. So it was a real pleasure to come here and first of all introduce the film, watch the film again on the big screen, and then talk to about 80 school children about reviewing and how you go about writing a film review and where you start. I'm from here in Northern Ireland, I'm from Portstewart, and I've always loved film. You know, some of my earliest memories are going to see Return of the Jedi in the cinema and Snow White on re-release and things like that. So I kept that up. I was trying to be sensible though when I went to university. I went and I studied law, and I was going to be a lawyer and I was going to make lots of money, and I was bored out of my tiny mind. So gradually, you know, I went through it and I kept giving it a chance, and I qualified as a barrister, and I just still hated it. So I jumped, and I was lucky enough to get an internship at Empire magazine about 2 months later, and I've basically sort of been there on and off ever since. I was on staff for about 11 years. I'm now freelance, so I get to write for other people as well, but it's still kind of my home from home. During especially the early years at Empire, you know, I tended to be the only full-time writer on staff of the magazine. Obviously with female freelancers, we had other females on staff doing other jobs. But you're definitely in the minority as a woman, and you still are in the minority as a woman. I think what's changed is that you are getting more women speaking out and more women talking about things from their point of view, and I think that has really begun to change things. You know, the fact Twitter has really helped, actually. I know it has a bad reputation, but it does help people kind of organise and see that they're not alone in, for example, criticising La La Land from a feminist perspective. You know, that kind of thing. It's not just you're not being weird. It is a real thing, and it is out there, and people are talking about it, even if they're not in your immediate vicinity. So I think it's slowly changing. They're now aware that there's a problem, that there are too many male critics. It's just a question of kind of getting the women up there. And I think one problem is, I mean, and this is to draw a huge generalisation, but one problem is that women are not really rewarded for having strong opinions in this world. Women are encouraged to be conciliatory and to hedge their bets and to sort of not try and alienate anybody. And I think sometimes you have to, as a critic especially, you have to be willing to sort of die on some ridiculous hill and stick with your opinion, whatever comes at you. And that can be harder, I think, for women because they've been indoctrinated otherwise. So it's not something that's innate, I don't think. I think lots of women have very strong opinions. If you get them on their own behind closed doors, they have all these opinions. They just are not always willing to express them publicly and sort of take all the flack that they're going to get, because studies have repeatedly shown women get more flack for this than men do. So it is still something that we need to be conscious of, and we need to start kind of changing. I think if you want to write about film, first of all, you need to know as many films as possible. You know, so you need to have at least a kind of a skeleton view of film history. You don't have to see every film made in the 1950s, but you should probably have an awareness of what kind of films were being made in the 1950s, what kind of films were they're being made in the 20s, what kind of things were those like, and maybe try and see a few from each era, so you've at least got a kind of framework to hang your opinions on. And you should love film. I don't think anybody gets into film criticism because they hate it, much as that some directors would like to think that's the case. I don't think it is. I also think to be a really good critic, you need to know your stuff. So you need to know, on the most basic level, spelling, punctuation, grammar, all the boring things. But I also think it helps to be kind of engaged in the world. It helps to know about history and art and literature and music and plays. You know, if you know your Shakespeare, you'll know that The Lion King is basically Hamlet. If you don't, you're just going to see some cuddly toys. You know, so it helps. The more you know about really anything, the more it will help you be a good critic.